think a few people will still be coming in, but we'll keep the doors open, of course, and let people come in. This is being recorded if you like to watch it again. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to spend a little bit of time with us to learn about our continuation of our Think Like an Attacker series. This time, we're going to take a look at identity security, or maybe insecurity, as the case may be. It has been said that identity is the new perimeter. And when I stop and think about how many systems we access with our usernames and passwords, and hopefully a second factor of some sort, it's not hard to see why it is such a big thing to be worried about. But before we go into the meat of it, I will first introduce myself. My name is Cliff Jansen. I'm the CISO and VP of Security here at Arctiq. Joining me on the call is Robert Tran, our marketing person extraordinaire. And I'll give my fine folk at BeyondTrust a second to introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning. My name is Chris Klein. I am the Global Director of Sales for our Insights and Entitle solution. So myself, along with David Falk, we lead the go-to-market strategy from a sales perspective and engineering perspective for our solutions, Insights, and Entitle.
Oh, sorry, David, you're on double muted, I think.
All right, how about now? All right, awesome. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Falk, Senior Solution Architect with BeyondTrust. Chris and I work hand in hand together for identity security at BeyondTrust. So happy to be here, and thanks for everyone for attending.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Cool. So before we get into some of the meat of the presentation, just want to introduce a little bit about Arctiq. We are a combination of companies that have been around for many years. We focus on 3 different lines of business: infrastructure, platform engineering, and our focus today is enterprise security. And we do those 3 platforms in kind of 3 styles. We'll provide solutions, software, hardware solutions for those things. We also provide professional services and managed services. Arctiq is like we architect intelligence. So we come up with blueprints in order to help you to guide the business along your journey as you are doing business as you do. We like to make sure we choose our partners very carefully, and we work very closely with our partners, such as BeyondTrust, because we believe they are the best and most suited to meet our customers' needs. Next slide, please. Our focus is on our clients. Our goal is to provide you with a blueprint for success. We cannot do this until we understand your unique problems, your vision, and the challenges that you face. Once we get everything aligned together, then we work with you in order to build a roadmap and make sure that we execute and do a successful delivery of whatever that outcome might be. Next slide to do that. So in order for us to do that, to guide us in this architectural journey together, we follow something we call our Service IQ methodology. We cover every aspect of the IT lifecycle, from initial assessment to ongoing management, in order to ensure that we can achieve your technology goals efficiently and effectively. This is a flexible and iterative model, so it goes like this, but we can jump around however we need to in order to make sure we're doing what's right for you. It's flexible, and iterative nature allows us for continuous improvement, making a perfect fit for organizations navigating the complexities of modern IT landscapes. So let's zoom in on the one that we're interested in today. So next slide, please. Our focus for today's webinar is the Insight IQ lifecycle. Here's where we're going to identify gaps, risks, and opportunities for improvement. In this case, we're looking specifically at your identity management. These insights are critical for crafting a tailored strategy that aligns with your business goals and drives value. So without further blabbing by me, I want to turn it over to fine folk at BeyondTrust.
Yeah, thank you, Cliff. Appreciate it. And again, it's great to speak with everyone today. You can go to the next slide. So usually I like to talk about kind of what the problem is, right? What's happening in the industry today around the world around cybersecurity. And actually this slide, 50%, it's actually upwards of close to 80% now of all cyber attacks involve an unauthorized use of an identity. So think about how impactful that is. That is clearly becoming the largest attack vector that bad actors choose. Next slide. So what's the problem, right? And if you really think about it, it's around identity sprawl. Every organization is struggling with managing all of their identities, entitlements, enrollments, permissions, etc. And it's an ever-growing problem for most organizations. Next slide. And most organizations, if you think about it, are overwhelmed with what's happening, right? You've got so many different identities, all kinds of different paths to privilege, and you hear that today, which is, again, overwhelming the IT teams. Next slide, please. The problem is bad actors know this too. So whether you're a nation state, an e-crime ring, or your average everyday hacker, you're looking for ways to get in the environment around stealing credentials. So if you think about it, the old days of breaking a window, if you use a home analogy, breaking a window to get in are not over, but a bad actor would love to rather have a set of keys to be able to get into your front door. And that's really what paths to privilege are about, right? So if you think about whether it's vulnerable human and machine accounts, exposed secrets and passwords, identity infrastructure misconfiguration, excessive and standing privilege, these are the types of things that bad actors are looking for, and bad actors are trying to exploit inside every environment around all of the different identities that are being managed. Next slide. So if you think about some of the pieces of the path to privilege that organizations are struggling with, it's around least privilege. When you think of, how do you grant users only the access they need when they need it? And how can you automate and enforce this inside an environment to reduce risk? Next slide, please. Or default, standing privilege, right? How do you enforce, instead of having always on access, giving just in time access? These are the types of things, again, organizations are struggling with: standing privilege, excessive privilege, and how do you manage this inside the organization? Next slide. That's why we created Identity Security Insights. When you think about what we're trying to do and why it's different than what you may have seen out there before, is we're looking to think like an attacker. I like to break this into 3 pillars. What does Insights do? The first thing is we do a discovery of all the different identities across your entire identity landscape, the enrollments, entitlements, permissions that everyone has, machine, human, or non-human accounts. The other side of it is the ITDR. So we do the detection and response piece that you would hope in a tool like this, detecting any kind of event thing that might be happening. But really the big differentiation of what we do is connecting these paths to privilege, right? Understanding, how do I think like a bad actor, right? Imagine having a bad actor turn good, work for your organization, and say, I'm going to look at every single identity inside your organization, and I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to look for all the misconfigurations, all the risks, all the vulnerabilities. I'm going to map out the attack path that I would do if I were there inside your environment, how I would elevate privileges to gain more access to launch an attack, and then give you recommendations before anything ever happens on how you can eliminate those gaps and get your hygiene back to a pristine state. That's the real big differentiator of what we're doing. So let's address, what does our Entitle piece of our solution do? Can you populate the slide out? So we're giving you just-in-time access, right? So make sure that no more do you have the standing privilege or excessive privilege inside your environment. We're giving you the just-in-time access that is needed for your identities. Next. And self-service, right? Only create friction when friction is needed. Most applications can be done through auto approvals. That's what we do. And then as you get more for applications that are critical, higher access levels, things like that, then is when you introduce a little bit of friction in some approvals, right? So you can, again, remove the excessive and standing privilege in the environment. Again, centralized recertification and campaigns across different teams and applications, right? Understanding what you have so you can do access reviews. And the last one on this page is going to be break glass, right? So obviously, if there's an emergency, you can get in, you can do break glass scenarios with full auditing control to ensure secure access in these situations. Next slide, please. So let's look at the insights piece of our platform and look at the architecture, right? Kind of a high level architecture. If you look from left to right, these are the collectors that we're able to collect into today, right? So this is how we're gathering our intelligence, whether it's BeyondTrust solutions, AD, Entra, Okta, or Ping, public clouds like AWS, Google, or SaaS, GitHub, right? We're adding collectors all the time, and we ingest this into our proprietary data correlation engine. We're utilizing AI and ML along with our threat research team to really make sense of the data that we're getting. And again, these are all disparate solutions and applications that we're bringing together to make sense of all the enrollments, entitlements, permissions that each identity, human or non-human, have. And we do two things. One is we provide recommendations. This is the proactive hygiene part, right? So if we see misconfigurations, we see paths to privilege that a bad actor could take, and I'll show in the next couple of slides, we are going to provide recommendations on how you can fix this, get your posture back to a high state, and mitigate risk inside the organization. And then we also have our detections. These are event-based types of detections, right? An MFA fatigue attack, things like that, that we see in the environment, things that are event-based, we're going to notify on those as well. And then if you look to the right, our tool is a read-only tool. So what we do is we integrate with these other tools automatically, right? Whether it's BeyondTrust solutions to enforce, say, just-in-time access, enforce a password reset if it's an MFA fatigue attack, and so on throughout our entire platform to automate this. We also can automatically hook into a SIM source solution that you might have, or we have our automated webhooks, right? So whatever applications you use internally that we can ingest to, we will integrate into there to provide the information on A, the recommendations, so you can take actions, again, to get your hygiene back to a pristine state and reduce the gaps, or B, the detections that we have so you can remediate these immediately in the environment. Next slide, please. And when you think about the Entitle piece of our platform, how does it work? And as I talked about before, it's about ease of use, right? So you enforce the important things of just-in-time access, but it's self-service requests, right? No code policy engine, so you can move through quickly inside to gain the access that you need when you need it and the time that you need these. Next slide, please. And as you can look at this pyramid, right, when you think about, some of the low level type things, they're, easy automated approvals. And then as you move through, it increases the risk level, and the friction level as you increase the risk of the permissions that you're giving inside these applications inside your environment. But again, enforcing least privilege and zero privilege, zero standing privilege inside the environment is easy and quick with Entitle as part of our platform. And again, with insights. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at how insights would work. So this is a high level look at the midnight blizzard attack that Microsoft faced last year. And now, what I like to usually talk about here is I wish there was a zero on this slide. What would the zero indicate? Now, we all know that Microsoft likely got notified that there was a test user account with no MFA on it. The issue is it probably got lost in the noise of thousands of accounts that probably had no MFA on it. They might have had a little context, but really no connecting the dots of why this might be important and why they should focus on this. If they had insights in their environment, insights would have said, hey, you have a test user with no MFA on it that has access to an old OAuth app that could be used to create a new privileged account to give consent to an attacker app to authenticate into corporate mailboxes. We would have painted this picture with a higher severity level with recommendations of how to fix before it ever would have happened. We know the bad actor lurked around for over 2 months because we know once they get in, they've assumed the identity of this test user. So now they can lurk around undetected and they can figure out what can they do to elevate access so they can launch an attack. Very interesting, right? So if, say, Microsoft would have done nothing, a password spray attack. I like to call these password spray events. So imagine, again, we'll use a burglar scenario. Imagine a burglar has a set of keys and they're just trying to get into your house. They find the right key and they get in. It's not a robbery yet. It's still just a burglary, right? Because they haven't stolen anything, right? That's kind of what a password spray attack is. They take all these passwords. They keep pinging these passwords till they get in. They got in here. We would have alerted on the password spray attack, but we would have tied it back to this same test user account that we already flagged to them that said had access to an old OAuth app, and then move through again, connecting the dots past and future of where it will go if a bad actor gets a hold of this. Let's say Microsoft still did nothing when the bad actor created a new privileged account. Now, Microsoft probably got notified on this, but if you're not connecting the dots before and after, it's hard to know whether this is important or not and for them to focus on, right? Because we know a lot of attacks that happen, a lot of it is because so many disparate tools are hard to figure out and connect the dots of whether it means something or not. We would have said, hey, you now have a new privileged account that was created. This is that same test user account that we talked about that underwent a password spray attack that has access to an old OAuth app that was used to create this privileged account. And then we would move through the 3 and 4 of why they could do next. If you think about the other tools that are out there today, you have your access management tools, your discovery tools that would have, again, alerted that you have a test user account with no MFA, maybe provided some context around risk, but really would have gotten lost in the noise because not enough connecting the dots and context would have given priority to look at this one over others. We would have done that too, but again, giving you the context back and forth of what could happen. An ITDR tool would typically come around 3 and 4 when the actual event is actually happening. And how do you minimize the dwell time there and pull out this before it does anything? Again, we would have alerted on that as well and said, hey, you have a detection, there's something going on in the environment. But it's really this middle piece that really separates us from everybody out there, and that's connecting these paths to privilege that a bad actor would take to elevate the access to gain more to launch an attack. Is the again, predicting it before it ever happens, and then while it's going through and they're lurking around, we're noticing these things, taking these breadcrumbs and putting them together to connect, so you can connect the dots and understand what could be happening and is happening in the environment. Next slide, please. So we'll look at our portal, and David's going to show this when he does his example. He's going to go into more detail, but let's take a look at kind of how we map these out, right? So if you look at this particular user, Elizabeth has no direct privilege. But BeyondTrust is saying Elizabeth has her true privilege is the highest. Why? Well, Elizabeth is a member of this HR group that has generic all access rights that contains this user, Karen, that's an admin user. What would a bad actor do? So a bad actor would steal Elizabeth's identity, map out what they can do, go out to a bloodhound type of tool and say, what can I do here to gain more access so I can launch an attack? And bloodhound would map this out. And so then the bad actor would come back in, take Elizabeth's identity, move through this process here, and change the password to Karen and become Karen to be able to launch their attack. Now they're an admin. Now they have a lot more access, and they could create a lot more damage for that organization. We're mapping these paths out before they ever happen. David and I were on a call the other day with a customer who's testing currently, and we pulled up something like this in their environment, and they had a bunch of these, and we see these in every environment. And the customer said, I don't think that this is correct. While they were showing us their portal, they went into their Active Directory and they found this user, and we heard silence. And the customer said, oh no, we would never know that this risky path existed inside their environment because nobody's really looking at it, right? And that's what's happening in so many environments. And this is, again, thinking like the attacker. A bad actor would do this and would take this path if they were to get into the organization and steal Elizabeth's identity. Next slide. I'm almost at the end of my slides, and I'll turn it over to David here shortly. So this is another look inside our environment, and this is really showing an identity genome, right? So if you look, it's kind of an eye chart, but if you look at the bottom left there, you see kind of a fingerprint, right? That's a particular identity, right? And these are everything that they have access, enrollments, entitlements, permissions inside the environment. The orange indicates if you're a bad actor, what are the paths they would take to elevate their privilege to gain more access to launch an attack. These are the pathways that a bad actor would take. And then we give you the recommendations, again, how to shore up your posture and get your hygiene back to a pristine state. Think about the power of this to know all these different access pathways inside the environment, cross-domain, and David's going to talk about this, between AD and Entra and things like that, different domains, AWS. So where the communication is, we're bringing all this together to say, hey, from this particular, if you have Okta, from Okta, you can then jump over to AWS and elevate some privileges, things like that, right? These are things we're mapping out that you're not going to find from any other tool out there that's incredibly powerful in the environment that organizations have today. And these are the things that they're struggling with, because how do you manage all of this inside an environment? Next slide. Oh, actually, the next slide, I'm sorry. It was supposed to be, there we go. So my last slide here is that how are we enforcing least privilege and zero trust? So when you think about the top left here, this is we have robust reporting inside our Insight solution, right? So we're going to be able to enforce least privilege and zero trust by identifying these misconfigurations, by, ensuring accurate role entitlements, revealing hidden paths to privilege, right? Detecting over permissioned accounts. We're doing all of this in the environment, and then you can run these reports and have these reports automated to show that, hey, is everybody following the proper processes? Are we seeing trends in the right direction of enforcing our least privilege and zero trust policies? These are the things that we're going to be able to help illuminate inside our reporting tools to help enforce these things. And again, on the bottom left, there are the node graphs that we have that are illustrating and illuminating the different paths that bad actors can take and would take in the environment before they take them. And then we give you recommendations on how to fix those to ensure that, again, your hygiene's back to a pristine state. I will stop there. Appreciate your time. And David Falk will now go into a demo to show insights in a demo environment, how it would work. David?
All right, thanks, Chris. And everyone, good afternoon. I'm going to share my screen today, and we're actually going to jump into the Insight solution as it stands. And so the thing to keep in mind is that, let me move this WebEx stuff around. There we go. Is that this is running on live data, right? So it's not stage data or anything. And the idea behind this is to show you a real world example of what some environments look like in the wild. The first thing to notice is that we do have different dashboards. So for the different people or personas inside of your organization that may need to slice and dice and view this data differently, they certainly can. Let's say a part of our SOC team wants to see the most recent detections and what's happening today. Then we have the threats page for that. Let's say that our IAM team wanted to view our most risky accounts and why they're over permissioned, and so that we have the high risk accounts view for that. We're going to start in the summary view today and take a look at the solution. Before we talk about all these numbers and colors, let's talk about where everything is coming from, and that's going to be our connectors. Like Chris Klein said, our connectors are the pieces that are going to go out to your identity providers, SaaS providers, and your BeyondTrust solutions, and collect things like accounts, entitlements, relationships, configurations, events, group membership, roles, all of the above, right? And these are all collected on a read-only basis. So our connectors are read-only. So very lightweight, easy, and low risk to deploy. We connect to AWS, GitHub, Google Cloud, on-premise Active Directory, Microsoft Azure, Okta, PingOne, and then our solutions as well. Once those connectors are collecting information, we're going to start driving this information that you see here. These top three tiles are very much informational. How many accounts do we have? How many are dormant? And how many accounts with high true privilege? We're going to talk about true privilege a lot because it's a key differentiator for our solution. The idea behind true privilege is I want you all on this call to think about every account within your environment today. And they either have no privilege or some level of privilege. Well, how do we grant privilege? That's typically through group membership, if we're talking about something like Active Directory, or assigning a role or an entitlement or a group in Azure, Okta, Ping, any of our other identity providers. Well, what about things like nested group membership, identity provider misconfiguration, or cloud application ownership that can lead to a lot more privilege than we may be aware of? That's where we're showing true privilege. We're showing not just what am I a member of, but what can actually be accessed via my account. We're also going to highlight escalation paths within the environment. Let's first start by taking a look at an identity. So the identity we're going to use today is going to be Amy Miller, this top one on the list. And if you start, we can first see that the privilege levels are highest in the environment. 9 accounts make up this identity. 32 key entitlements, a key entitlement being something that grants privilege, whether it's a group membership, role, or entitlement. 0 event-based detections, which is very good, and then 13 posture and hygiene-based recommendations for this identity to reduce paths to privilege. Now, if we click into Amy, the first thing that we're going to see are the accounts that make up this identity. This is all crawled automatically, so this is not correlation you have to go do yourselves. We're going to use our AI and ML algorithms to go out and crawl your identity providers and match the accounts to the right identity, whether it be human or non-human identities. Here we can see a list of those accounts that were matched for this user, and then also we can see any labels that we've applied. You can think of labels like tagging, right? Labels are super important because it's not just important to understand where our accounts exist, but are they being used or misused as well? And our labels are things like disabled, dormant, external, human versus service. We can also do some password hygiene stuff on Active Directory to tell you where you have blank passwords, shared passwords, and even compromised passwords. And the other goal of this solution is to accelerate and highlight the value of PAM in general. So we'll also tell you if your accounts are being managed properly by a PAM solution. And this is all done automatically. Now, the thing I want to show that's really different for us is the true privilege graph. And Chris Klein gave an excellent example, but I want to walk through one of these paths to privilege together. So if we start right here, this leftmost unit is the identity. And then the next layer of nodes is going to be the accounts that this identity uses. And you can see here her Okta account is a group membership administrator, an org administrator, and an application administrator. But if we scroll up here, we're going to focus on her intra ID account. Here's the intra ID account. It has the directory role assigned application administrator, which can manage a service principal in Azure named Mail Audit, where if we can read sideways here, we can see that Mail Audit has the capabilities to write global administrator via this role management read-write directory. So a couple of things that we've noticed just from looking at one true privilege graph for one person. One, Amy's got some standing privilege with application administrator. This is something that would be great to just-in-time enable with something like Entitle from BeyondTrust, which is just-in-time access for everything. And then two, we've got a way over-privileged service principal. Something named Mail Audit should not have the capability to write roles such as global administrator within my environment. Now, that's a pretty easy path to privilege and something that we'd want to understand. Let's look at something else here that gets a little bit more complex. Let's look at Amy's Okta account that has cross-domain access to an AWS Identity Center user that has access to, is a member of AWS Lab Access that gives us access to these two AWS IAM roles or ARNs. Now, what's interesting about that is now we're showing the ability for an attacker to move from one identity provider to another. So moving from Okta to AWS and what they would have access to. This is quite interesting when we consider we're only looking at one singular identity within the environment currently. We're going to be driving recommendations for every identity within the environment. Again, recommendations are posture and hygiene based. These are the things that we recommend you remediate, remove, update, delete, whatever it may be to reduce paths to privilege within the environment. You can see some of the list of our recommendations here. You know, you've got accounts vulnerable to rep roasting or accounts with duplicate passwords, or you've got passwords set to not expire. Other things like we've got domain administrators with service principal names or local intra-ID applications with privileged roles. That's something we see often in a lot of environments when we're talking about Okta and Azure applications. There's a lot of third-party ones that are way overprivileged, and you can't control the security of the third-party entity that now has access to your environment through these privileged roles. And so we want to get a handle on that and understand where those exist in our environment. But let's take a look at one recommendation here. So Active Directory certificate services template is vulnerable to abuse. Below is a list of the accounts that could be accessed via this path to privilege in my environment. What this is basically saying is you've got some misconfigured ADCS templates that will allow for privilege escalation. So once we click into one of these right here, we'll give you the recommendation for everything we recommend, the concern, why we believe it's a concern, how you should address it, and then the key for us is we're always tying it back to the identity. So we don't want to have siloed security info anymore. We want to understand if this is abused in my environment today, what's the risk? What's the blast radius? And by tying it back to the whole identity, now we get a true picture of that. Here we can see down below any more details we have, such as the name of the template, how long the renewal period is, who's issuing it. we can also take action. So we've built a webhook-based integration engine, and the idea behind this is to be able to integrate with other things in the security ecosystem. So now I could tell my PAM solution to onboard this account. I could create an incident in ServiceNow. I could do some access reviews in our Entitle just-in-time solution. Got a lot of capability here. I'm going to pull up the list of recommendations and go to the next page and just leave it open for just a moment. I want everyone to read through this and kind of understand the breadth, depth, and scope of everything we're able to cover with this solution. Okay, excellent. Now, again, we just looked at identities, we've looked at recommendations. Now we're going to take a look at detections. So again, recommendations are posture and hygiene based. We recommend you clean these things up to reduce paths to privilege in your environment. Detections are event based. Detections are things that are happening or have happened, which is interesting, right? We want to make sure with recommendations we clean up everything that an attacker could abuse, but we also want to detect bad behavior. And that's the idea behind detections. I've got a really interesting one here. Where'd it go? It's been a while. Admin action performed through proxy. So basically what this is saying is, because we're taking a behavioral baseline of your accounts, we understand that this user, David Falk, which happens to be me, doesn't normally work with a proxy to connect to Okta every day. And now all of a sudden we are, which is certainly an alertable event. If you think about across the attack change, there's something that's significant across every step of it, and it's something changing, right? And so what changed for me is I'm now connecting through a proxy. Here's my proxy IP address. Here's everything I did with the session, and then even the raw log of everything I did here. Detections can be sent off via webhook to other systems automatically. And so we have a lot of built-in integrations. This isn't the entire list. We have some more on our website for things such as integrating into CrowdStrike. They're really good at doing response. Things integrating such as Microsoft Defender for identity. We want to live where you ingest your security events today and not create an entirely new workflow. And so that's the idea behind these webhook-based integrations. Once I go back to the home page, now we can talk about escalation paths. And I've got one that I want to show that I think is absolutely critical and quite interesting. The reason I love this one is the following. So we've got a user here, Elizabeth Johnson, who we're saying has no privilege. So let's really think about that together. If I go query Active Directory and say, show me my domain admins, Elizabeth Johnson doesn't exist in that group. She has no privilege. But we're saying her true privilege is the highest. Why is that? Well, Elizabeth, the user, is a member of a group that has the generic all capabilities over an org unit that contains an administrative user. So if I'm an attacker, what am I going to do? I'm going to use Elizabeth's account to change this user's password, and now I become an administrator. So again, Active Directory is not aware of this privilege itself, but BeyondTrust is highlighting that for you so that it can be closed before it's abused by an attacker. We've got some other great examples in here, such as cross-domain escalations. So now we can see an unprivileged user in Okta that can access an AWS IAM user and access the facilitators group and get access to an ARN or an IAM role, which is quite interesting. One other example I really like here is the mail audit one. I think it's just a fantastic example of something we see in the real world all the time. Dave Grindez, this user, has the directory role assigned application administrator, can manage this service principal that can write roles via role management read-write directory. So again, these are underlying privileges we may be unaware of in our environment. This is the true privilege of the account, not just what am I a member of, but what can actually be accessed via the privilege of my account, identity provider configuration or misconfiguration, application ownership, and nested group membership. And it could be a number of other things as well. We do have a built-in robust reporting engine as well. And the idea behind that is we can show you your identity data how we believe you want to see it all day. But when you really want to slice and dice it yourself and understand things about your environment in a way that you can only get from our correlation and our data and our expertise, reporting is going to do that for you. I've got a group access explorer where I can say, go show me all of my high privileged groups and their members in AD or just Okta or whatever it may be. And we can filter that out and see exactly what we want there. We can also look at things like trend reporting here. Are we moving in the right direction for closing past the privilege and cleaning up in our environment? And the trend reporting will certainly show you that. Speaking of reporting, I think our most powerful one is the identity security risk assessment, which is something that we offer to everyone. The idea behind this is to take all of our data and correlation, run it in your environment for a couple of days, and then print out a nice assessment based on it. This assessment is 4 pages long and includes things like where's our true privileges, what's our risk and hygiene level, where's our credential exposures, and a nice summary as well. Okay. All right. Hopefully that was valuable for everyone that's on the session today. That's going to wrap up my kind of demo portion. I am here for any questions and answers, and thanks for joining us.
Cool. Thank you, David and Chris. So just want to thank you very much for the great info. And I want to reiterate, like, this is exactly what the attackers do and what we do as part of a pen test. So these graph maps are something that we use in order to determine where we need to get in order to access our goal, whatever our goal might be. So it may be in just one of the things that David mentioned about was the Active Directory certificate issue that was prevalent in the organization that he was doing. We may or may not have taken advantage of something exactly like that a couple of weeks ago in a pen test that got us into the access that we needed to do. Escalation of privileges is the name of the game for the attacker. They want to be able to, they have a goal in mind and they want to be able to find a way to get to that goal. And it could be different for everything. Like we sometimes in a pen test, we start to think about getting domain admin as the goal, but it could be anything. It could be I need to get access to a finance person that approves the purchases in order to get some money out of it. Could be that I want to be able to go in as the help desk in order to reset passwords. Maybe I need to go in as a desktop support, or maybe even a service account that can roll out software onto the organization in order to deploy my encryptor. Whatever it might be, the attackers and us as pen testers are going through in order to try to find that path, and we're usually very successful at it. So it's nothing new. You know, a decade ago, I wrote a PowerShell script that would basically go in, you type whatever group you wanted to be a member of. It would dump out that list of users that were a member of that group, and then search out any workstations or servers that were tied into Active Directory to look for wherever that person might have logged on to. And then now this is our target. So we want to get onto that machine in order to get the cached credentials out of there. And this was a decade ago, and things have just got way more complex, and there's way more moving parts there than there ever have been before. So it's really important for us to be able to know where our privileges lie, and being able to ideally prevent the attackers from doing these things, or detect them if we can't. So that's just to solidify that this is an important problem and something that I really encourage you to look into, especially as was mentioned by David. There is a free identity security risk assessment that we are offering as part of in association with BeyondTrust in order for you to understand what your current stance is. We can't protect what we don't know about, so the first step is getting to know about it, and we'll give you a slide on how you can find out some more information about that in a couple of seconds. So next slide. So thank you very much again, Chris and David, for that. If there's any questions, please put them in the chat. I did have the chat window open, but I think I just closed it a minute ago. So I just wanted to see if there's any questions in here. No new questions. Yeah, Robert, if you want to go to that next slide. So again, key takeaway, attackers are going to take advantage of the privileges, and we need to make sure we're able to prevent or detect them from misuse. Can't protect what we don't know about, so to use this as an opportunity to get to know about it. You can click on the code. Trust me, it's secure. I'm a security guy. I wouldn't lie to you. But yeah, please, if you don't trust it, go to arctiq.com and go to here for our free BeyondTrust security assessment. Good. Anything you would like to add, David or Chris? No, the tool is not open source.
Yeah, and just one thing, and just make sure to reiterate on the assessment, it is read-only,
Yeah.
and it is no obligation and no commitment from any customer. So it's, again, it's read-only, so it doesn't impact workflow. Very critical to know that as an important piece of it. So.
Yeah, and yeah, very low touch, very quick as well for it to set up and gather and start to gather the information. Yeah, and very comprehensive as well, I might add. So I don't see any further questions. So, but of course, please feel free to reach out if you do have questions. There's a page there that you can use in order to fill out to submit, or there's just a generic questions for any kind of questions that you might have on the Arctiq website. I thank you very much for your time. Time is very valuable. I thank you for taking the time to spend with us, and hope to see you all again soon. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.